I want to quickly summarize where we are at the moment. According to current research, pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like, for example, heterosexuality. No one chooses to be a pedophile. No one can cease being one. The difference between pedophilia and other sexual orientations is that living out this sexual orientation will end in a disaster.
Under current California law, whether certain people end up on the sex offender registry all depends on what kind of sex they had. State Senator Scott Wiener says it discriminates against the LGBTQ community, and his bill aims to change that. Social media comments like these are flooding the internet, calling out SB 145, many saying it legalizes pedophilia. Senator Scott Wiener, who introduced the bill, says that's not true.
It's an anti-discrimination law. It ends discrimination against LGBTQ young people on the sex offender registry.
The bill deals with situations where someone between the ages of 14 and 17 has sex with someone no more than 10 years older than them. Right now, California law says whether that older person ends up on the sex offender registry depends on what kind of sex they had.
A 19-year-old has a 17-year-old girlfriend and they have sex. That is statutory rape, but the law right now says that the judge does not have to put that 19-year-old boy on the sex offender registry because of the kind of sex that they were having. But if it's a 19-year-old boy having sex with his 17-year-old boyfriend, the judge must put that 19-year-old onto the sex offender registry, even if it was completely consensual, even if they were boyfriends, even if there was nothing coercive or predatory about it.
That's because current California law says if the kind of sex involved is anal or oral, then the person is automatically placed on the sex offender registry. However, if the case involved just vaginal sex, then it's up to a judge to decide. What SB 145 does is give judges that discretion in all cases, regardless of the kind of sex. The bill has ignited lots of comments on ABC 10's and Senator Scott Wiener's Facebook pages. Comments like these saying that the bill would make it so an 18-year-old could rape an 8-year-old.
This bill has no application to anyone under the age of 14.
Despite death threats and negative comments directed towards Wiener, his bill passed.
I truly do believe that every person is longing for love at some point in their life. And what if this love that you really wish for will forever be impossible? That must be a really lonely situation to be in. It's like telling me, we know that you love your boyfriend and we don't minimize this love. However, you cannot act out on it ever. And on top of that, you won't be able to talk about it with anyone. So unfortunately, sometimes it does go wrong. Sometimes people do start offending. And I'm not justifying this. On the contrary, I work for police. I'm just saying that it's a logical thing to happen. So what do we do with this knowledge? Well, I think there will be many of you telling me now, you know what, let's just ban all these people from society, let's just lock them all up and let's just leave them somewhere far away from our children. From an emotional point of view, I can kind of understand that you would want to eliminate these people from society. However, it doesn't make sense. And that's because we're talking about biology. We're talking about a sexual orientation, something that we simply cannot change. And on top of that, every day new people are born with the same difficulty. So it's not practical to eliminate these people from society. They haven't done anything wrong. Aren't all those violent, gruesome men waiting in the bushes for children they can attack? On the contrary, research portrays that the great majority of children that are abused, I'm talking 70, 80, maybe even 90%, they're abused by someone they know. Someone close to them, someone from their neighborhood, their family, or their sports club. I hear you think now, well, yeah, but I know my family, I know my friends, and it wouldn't happen. Not in my backyard, not in my family. And this is because we tend to think in stigmas. We tend to think that people who would do this, they're either really pathetic, lonely men spending 24/7 on the internet waiting for children they can groom. Or they must be really psychopathic men, really violent, with no conscience whatsoever. I can tell you from experience, this stigma is simply not correct. Where I'm heading at is, we shouldn't think about this problem only from a criminal justice perspective. Yes, definitely, law enforcement is a great solution. Repression is a great solution, but it isn't always the right one. Of course, when someone has committed a lot of offenses and doesn't ever intend to stop, we should punish them. But the criminal justice system has always meant to have been a last resort, and we should keep it that way. So how can we be open about the problem now? How can we break the taboo? Well, first of all, let's stop with hate. Let's stop with negative vibes in the media, and let's stop with throwing rocks at offenders' houses, because it's not going to take us anywhere. It's never going to solve this problem.
But just like pedophiles, we are not responsible for our feelings. We do not choose them, but we are responsible for our actions, and we must make a decision. It is our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles and to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with.
It's a rare glimpse into a reviled group. Tonight, a self-described pedophile shares his story, and the Toronto expert who tells us why hearing from people like him could actually help protect your kids from predators.
Pedophiles get this message from society that they're destined to offend. And I want to tell them that's not true. I think they can live a non-offending life just like I do. And, it can be done.
Todd Nickerson, speaking on Skype from his parents' home in Tennessee, is part of an online support group with more than 1,000 members who call themselves virtuous pedophiles.
I'm not crazy about the name virtuous pedophiles. It kind of sounds pretentious. Probably a better name would have been celibate pedophiles.
What does it mean to be a virtuous pedophile, and what is your organization all about?
To me, it means basically living within the law and first and foremost, doing no harm.
This Toronto psychologist and sexual behavior scientist at CAMH says there's evidence in brain scans that pedophiles are born that way. But little research has been done on those who don't act on their urges.
Unfortunately, because this population has been driven so far underground, there's really no good way to study them. The only people that we can ask questions about and do research about are the people who commit crimes, get caught, and then, become known to the system.
City News has featured people like Justin Payne, the vigilante pedophile hunter.
It don't matter where you made them. You're not supposed to. It's illegal.
And a new Vice documentary called Age of Consent also delves into the creep catcher phenomenon.
I don't think this kind of a social phenomenon can be stopped, but I think the energy behind it can be channeled for good. I just don't, but there's no evidence to suggest that the shaming techniques do any good.
And here's why. Dr. Cantor says having an attraction to children doesn't mean someone will act on it. And those are the people, the ones who don't act on it, who are not being studied because of the stigma.
For somebody who has nothing to be gained by saying, hey, doc, I have a problem, and by the way we treat them, they would be crazy to come forth and volunteer for a study, even though that's exactly what we need them to do in order to understand how to prevent pedophilia in the first place.
By persecuting us, by trying to treat us as a ticking time bomb, they're not helping kids, because what they end up doing is they end up pushing us underground. Pedophiles who are stressed out, who are lonely, or who are, feel isolated, are more apt to act out. So when society treats us that way, they're probably not helping kids. They're actually doing more harm than good.
Unfortunately, what we know about the people who cross over and do commit an offense is the period of life in which they do that is usually when somebody feels the most desperate. But all we've done with our policies is make them feel even more desperate instead of open up different avenues where they can come in for help.
Cantor says even though this country's mandatory reporting laws are well-intentioned, it means that anyone going to a doctor or a therapist trying to get help before there is any kind of a crime would face being reported. I'm Avery Haynes, City News.
Accept that pedophiles are people who have not chosen their sexuality and who, unlike most of us, will never be able to live it out freely if they want to lead an upright life. We should accept that pedophilia is a sexual preference, a thought, a feeling, and not an act. We should differentiate between child sexual abuse and pedophilia. We shouldn't increase the suffering of pedophiles by excluding them, by blaming and mocking them.
Evidence in brain scans that pedophiles are born that way. And that's because we're talking about biology. We're talking about a sexual orientation. Something that we simply cannot change. Pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like, for example, heterosexuality.